poets, prophets, pundits, polymaths, pastors, and peers. This is good culture. This is a place where we get to be curious with creatives, insightful with intellectuals, and thoughtful with theologians. On today's episode, 5 exceptional men talk about mental and emotional health. Enjoy.
We're digging into this thing. Thank you guys for joining this conversation. I'm just going to jump right into it. You guys are experts in your own lives. So, as we're talking about emotional and mental health, growing up, what was that like in your own household from your own perspective? Was there even like a guide on how to be mentally healthy or emotionally healthy? And how did you come to some sort of health later in life?
If yelling was an emotion and screaming and yelling and let me just produce fear and more fear in you. I mean, you know how it was for us specifically. Yeah. I'm just thinking about like when we were at the house, you know, especially at a time in a season where all the men were gone, and we was raised by a lovely grandmother, amazing aunts and women, but it was all women. Right? Yes. And like their thing, and they was trying to raise all boys. Yes. So what it was, get the switch, I'm yelling, I'm gonna try to produce a fear because I don't know what else to do with you. And so that was it. It was just like a lot, like we would yell, we would like, all right, and then 3 minutes later act like there was not all right. We all just like we all good. So I guess we reconciled to that thing. We gonna talk about this. So that was it.
That was emotional.
That was the emotional talk and was
through a belt.
Yeah.
I think I learned a lot on what not to do, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The whole thing about go get the switch, how traumatizing is that though?
Yes.
It's just this I grew up in South Florida. You was in Cali.
Yep.
So if y'all was getting switches over there, like, so it's a universal culture.
It was
thing,
belts
right?
and everything.
So go choose the weapon that's going to punish you. Yeah. Like, and it better not be, because if I gotta go get it myself.
It better not be lights.
If I gotta go get it myself, like how traumatizing is that? Like, okay,
right.
You know, but similar.
Yeah.
Raised by majority women, wonderful women. Lost my father early, so it's just a lot of what not to do. The men in my life, though I love them dearly, probably weren't the best examples growing up. You know what I mean?
So answer the question, emotional, mental health. I grew up in the 80s, Detroit, Michigan. And so even that word, mental and emotional health, didn't exist until 2017.
Yeah.
Not for the black man. The black man was like, don't be no.
In fact.
You know, and Detroit at that time was a high matriarchal society. So 70% of the homes in Detroit were led by women. Most of the men were in prisons. And to give the women mercy and grace, they were trying to produce a toughness in us because they knew what was coming for us.
Yeah.
So tears and how do you feel? They like, that's gonna get you killed.
Yeah.
So I mean that's what I was raised in.
Yeah.
So I remember 2017. I'm 43 now. That means I was 37 at the time when I went to go see a counselor for the first time. He goes, "How do you feel?" I'm like, "Bro, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Feel. I exist. I get through. I endure.
That's good.
Yeah. We learned how to survive and not thrive so much of our life. Yeah.
I would say for me, growing up in a South Asian immigrant family, there's no emotion. Nobody's asking you how are you feeling, what you're going through. Similar things you guys are going through. We were getting punished, right? The belt was always handy. At the same time, like our parents never told us. My dad has never told me I love you, but I never doubted his love for me.
Absolutely.
Right? It was all through actions, all through what they did, mom and dad and relatives, all through what they did. But emotions, like they never showed any emotion towards us, right? Same like mental health, emotion, well-being. What is that? That wasn't anything for me until I became an adult.
Yeah. Everything that Dhati said, obviously we grew up in the same household because we're brothers. Add to that the influence of pop culture, right? So hip hop, and you think about hip hop in the 80s and the 90s. Only recently are men allowed to emote through lyrical expression. The only brothers that were allowed to emote were R&B singers, and you better be doing it for the for the sex. You know what I'm saying? And so
Right.
hip hop was, if athletics and hip hop were the things that influenced a lot of us.
Yeah.
And you see the men in athletics, they were tough. They didn't, they planned through pain. You got to be a dog. And in hip hop, it was like, oh no, I ain't no punk. I ain't no. And so you take on those attributes. And it's funny because as I look through these emotions, the only thing that we could express here was anger. You couldn't, or you could be glad, you could be happy, but you couldn't say glad. You could be
you
like,
could be
oh,
glad.
I'm feeling good, I'm all right.
Yeah. You excited about? I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
But anger is like, oh yeah, all day we can express anger, and even when you think you're feeling anger, you're probably you're feeling some sort of shame, and the only way you know how to express that shame is through some sort of anger. And so I think for me, I just grew up really just mad, getting into fights all the time, and and a lot of that was because just the dysfunction that I had with my father and my mother, and so. And it wasn't until, I think, becoming a Christian and seeing healthy marriages displayed through my brother, displayed through brothers like Byron Johnson who discipled me, and saying like, oh no, you can display other emotions and like not be, and still be a man, And so that was just a beautiful thing for me. So
Oftentimes I tell the kids, I say, hey, listen, I'm having to go through therapy because of what I went through. One day you're gonna have to be going to therapy because of what I put you through. I was just like, but here's the thing. Like we just went beyond. Like just think about it. Like we all have trauma. We all have problems. We all have issues. Like what the problem is that our generation is so normalized, kind of like the emotive, the lack of emotive. Abby just said something that I think it was like, that's like huge. My dad never said he loved me. And then we just kind of kept it moving like, and like, but I'm just saying like, but we know that that's not like, that type of now in our generation is just like, that was kind of more normative in a sense, but now it's kind of like, no. So when you ask, like, the question is like, how have we been taught? It's kind of like we've been taught survival, right? And that's really kind of been the calling card. And I think that's been the thing. And I think now it's kind of like what I love about the scriptures is like, the church, the people are starting to say, hey, we no longer have to survive. Like you can, like there are other options, there are other alternatives, because I don't think survival is bad.
right.
Like, I don't think survival is bad because I've been through some stuff, right? It's like, because if there is survival, there's chance.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And I just think that there's thing. And so I don't think it's like when we talk about survival or thriving, like it's like, oh, one is better. It's just like, because sometimes the best we're going to get is surviving.
And I praise God for our parents and our parents' parents, because I think it's a luxury to expect them to have anything other than survival, especially thinking about whether it be the racial animus that they dealt with, the difficulties of immigrating to another country. Like, the resources that they have is survival.
Right.
And to be able to pass that down to us, I think is a wonderful thing. And to expect them to be these emotive people when, in some ways, emotion was a luxury to have. I think it's, now granted, would have it been beautiful? Yes. And I do think we now are without excuse, I would say, to pass that down. Now that we've learned survival techniques, we have the benefit of not only surviving, but actually, to your point, thriving. And so, yes, our kids should be more equipped to be more integrated people.
No, should they? Why?
Say that one more time?
Should they? Based on what?
I just think we have resources now. We have practices. We have habits. There's a difference between information and wisdom.
Yeah.
We have way too much information to know how mental health is necessary for a thriving life, how emotional health is healthy. One example, going to Tuskegee and learning about the Tuskegee experiment, the impact of how people felt towards the medical profession.
Yeah.
Black people are just like, I don't trust medicine. I don't trust doctors. Well, we now know, all right, well, we have more information, we're more educated, that we can mature from a posture of just not trusting all medical profession and pass that resource down to our loved ones, where therapy was something that was taboo. Now it's something that's is pretty novel.
I think it's something to consider, though. I would say it's interesting that as Black and Indian descent as well, we both had to deal in our history with it being caste system in India, and there's a caste system here in America, to where mental health was tied to full humanity. And there's a time in our society where we weren't considered full humans to process our humanity. So it's not like our ancestors weren't trying to be fully
Right,
people,
absolutely.
but it's not like they just pass it down. That's the epigenetics, like a genetical thing, to where it's a new thing where we can say, hey, what does it look like to be fully human? That's actually a phenomenon for, I would say, the Black male, the Black female, the person of Indian descent that is coming over from a caste system and saying, it's like, okay, I don't have to abide by these rules, and I can process my humanity. But that's a new phenomenon.
But I think one of the things that I would say to that, being like the better to be fully human, and I'm gonna say it, but like I want to process it out, is not necessarily saying that we're a better human.
Yeah.
And I think that there's not one and the same in the sense. Being like the idea of the person being fully human versus a better human. And this is the reason why I say that. A lot of times we parent our kids to not have to go through what we went through. It makes them like, we'll give them dignity, we'll give them all the stuff that we didn't get. It doesn't necessarily make them a better human, but it just, so that's where I think sometimes we get into these conversations. I think that there's a lot of, when we look at our ancestors and we look at our history, there's a lot of people that we admire to be without all the tools and all the things, because we're all, in a lot of ways, we're in survival mode. And that's where like counseling and all that, these are just more tools accessible to try to be the tension that we have. And I guess what I'm just saying, like, ultimately, like, I think there is so much struggle, so much tension, so much like that even here. And I think what we do is kind of like, we says, all right, they had it worse than we had it. And and it's like, and we start comparing kind of, and I just think the bottom line is that, yes, in a lot of ways they had it worse. In a lot of ways it made them a better human, and a lot more fully human, right? Even though people say it. And so I guess what I'm saying is that tension that we have.
I think the question in that, though, is always asking, do I need to give my kids trauma to produce character? The answer is no.
No.
But they do need character, and they do need to struggle. It needs to be without trauma. And that's what I'm saying. I don't disagree with the survival. What I'm saying is, if you look at our history, a lot of the survival of our ancestors here in America, in caste system in India, it was based on immorality. It wasn't based on healthy character development. Trauma doesn't guarantee character.
No, absolutely not. Right.
So what I'm saying is they need healthy character development, void of trauma. Because it's like Lupe said, you cannot say in order to produce great music, you need to go through pain. You can produce great music without going through pain. So what I'm agreeing with Dhati saying, hey, our kids do need character.
Right.
But they don't need to get whipped.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
You can get saved in prison. You don't have to go to prison.
Right.
The question I was going to ask, kind of on the heels of what you were saying, like, is there a place for some type of trauma, right? So, like, as far as to build character, right?
Well, I don't. So trauma.
Or define trauma.
I wouldn't
Maybe
define.
that needs to be
Okay, so
defined.
Trauma is a reaction. It's like someone is in trauma. Trauma is an inability to make sense of something in the past, anticipating something bad happening in the future. Right? So that's trauma, right? When there's something that's happened to me in the past and I can't make sense, your brain, the human brain, is constantly trying to make sense out of things. And when I can't make sense out of it, and then now I'm anticipating something bad happening to me, I can't make sense out of why would my mom leave me? Why would my dad leave me? I can't make sense of why someone would give me up for adoption or whatever. That's a traumatic thing. Are you going to leave me too? Right? And so it's not, and so what part of the trauma is do we have the tools to help someone to get past their trauma? And I don't think we produce, like, If you live, you are going to have trauma.
Right.
Right? And that's it. Like, we don't need to help trauma. We don't need, and there have been times in history, and there will continue to be times in history where trauma is induced because of the evil of man and the systems and all of those things. And so a big part of it is not kind of justifying where, like, what time in history was the best time in history or whatever, but just saying, well, no matter what time in history that we're in, we have to deal with the trauma that comes, and how do we deal with that?
No, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, going back to the point of, can we build healthy homes, right, for our children, or what did we go through, going through trauma, things like that. Now looking at our situation, I don't know, we don't necessarily have to put our children in trauma, right? Yeah. But they're gonna go through adversity, right? Yeah. I mean, I got young kids now, they're going through adversity now. And how are we developing and giving them the right equipment in terms of mental health and not just in reactionary mode. Sometimes these things are going to happen with our kids at school or wherever, and then we're providing a home where my parents, when I went through issues being the only brown kid in a white and black world, like, I couldn't talk to my parents about that, right? They would have no idea what to do, but we can, like, you know, it's different problems that my kids are going through, but I can provide, you know, healthy advice, mental health wise. But on top of that, we can also be proactive about it. So sharing and how do you handle situations before they even happen. So when they go into those situations, they're already equipped with some of this language or processing, right, of how to handle certain situations. So I think that they're going to go through stuff, right? And so how do we equip them for that?
Yeah, so how do you? So how do you equip them? How do we build the character in our kids? Or even in yourself? What are some self-care practices that you have that keeps you centered, grounded, rooted, whatever the word you would like to use? Any other?
Yeah, no, I think what Evie said was amazing, just creating that outlet, right? And I think a lot of us, well, I say myself, there was no outlet, right? So you'll go outside the house, you'll face the world, traumatic, you'll come home, and it's still trauma there. You're like, I have no. So being able to create a space where, this, when you come home, you know you can offload. You can take all of this stuff off. You can talk, and then knowing that space is kind of fluid. When they were younger, we would talk to them differently. Now that they're older, the conversations are more mature. You know, they say things that they couldn't say before, or they would feel very uncomfortable saying before. But now we're in the thick of it. We're talking about it. You know what I mean? But also like we were talking about before, therapy. Like, you know, I've been able to see a therapist for the past however many months, and it's been great for me, and learning more about myself, like, you know, triggers for that cause different behavioral patterns or whatever the case is. And I've been able to use that to, like, you know, talk to my kids about too. Like, hey, this is happening because of this, and you know what I mean? So they can start to learn themselves at the age of 15, not 39. You know what I mean? 15, 16, 17. So I think
that's good. I would, you know, I think for me, I'm going to use some pastoral words, you know, if I can, that oftentimes has never been explained to me, but we do a lot of, whether it's through Known 360 or whatever. And it's words, the two words that I think about is confession and repentance. So you would ask, why? Well, how does that help you with mental health? First, when I would say confession, the way we define confession is a willingness to tell the truth about what's going on inside. So a lot of times when we talk about confession, we just talk about you confess the bad things that you do. No, but we're saying no. Confession is telling the truth about what's going on inside. And so what does that mean? What does that look like for us? We talk about in three ways: giving people the tools to be able to identify what's going on, explore what's going on, and then express it in a way that people, so like being able to tell the truth. And if I don't have the tools to be able to tell it, no one has taught me, then I'll do it. So that's the one thing. It's confession, giving our kids. So like with our kids, we sat down, we moved from the city, the suburbs out down to the city, was just like, how do you feel? And so we would make a statement, and then we'll put like a thing right in front of them and say, give us the words. What are you feeling right now? It's like, well, I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm lonely. And then he says, well, like, let's explore that. So that's one, confession. The second one is repentance. If you give people the ability to tell the truth about what's going on inside, it will change the way you both see yourself and see God, right? And that's what repentance ultimately is. It's about changing, right? The Greek word metanoia basically means to change, and all right, and to turn and to clean to God, have a different perspective. And I think we don't give people the ability to tell the truth about what's going on inside. So then they have to give a corrupt view or view of themselves, and then that distorts a distorted view of themselves, which has a distorted view of God, right? And I think so. If we start with just simply confession and repentance, right? That we like biblical words that God gives us to help navigate a broken world.
Yeah.
Then we're able to walk more human.
You gave 2 points in your 3. You're supposed to have 3 points.
But that was in the sermon. I asked for
That was the sermon. You can catch the Dhati Lewis. Blueprint Church.
Thank you for visiting.
Right.
So we know when we are feeling dysregulated, when we are getting to a place where it's like, all right, somebody's about to just get choked out. How do you know? What is your body telling you in that moment? How do you feel? What are the things that you're starting to feel? And then what do you do in order to get yourself back regulated?
You said choked up. You be choking people.
you be choking people. That's what I'm saying.
Somebody really what we heard.
See, that's all we heard. That's just like choking. Now,
Now he said about, we talking about confession. So
This was on it.
See, that's
this is a safe space. This is a safe space.
See, that's the thing. That's not on the inside. That's what you did because you didn't address what was on the inside. So you start choking folks. You start choking folks on the outside.
I just find one good name.
Y'all want to listen? I said I'm about to choke.
Okay then.
But the spirit, huh? The spirit stops me.
I guess I would say one thing. When sin entered into the world, where did God ask Adam?
Where are you?
Where are you? I think that's the thing. Whenever I'm dysregulated, that's the first thing that I ask myself. Dhati, where are you? And then, and then I begin to tell the truth. Yeah. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm lonely, I'm sad, whatever it is, I'll say, where am I? And I'm saying I'm hurt. And then I was like, wow. And then I explore what's making me hurt? Yeah. What pain has been brought? Or I'm angry. Yeah. Like, what matters to me? Yeah. Right? There's something that matters in this. Because I want to get to the core of what it is so that I can express what I need.
What are some of the things that you do that like people can identify, do you isolate? Is it showing your face?
No, I'm constantly processing it. And I'm and now it'll do, like, I'm always a person that how I'm feeling. Like, I try to hide it,
especially in
like on my sleeve. I'm
don't share an idea. You should be like,
I'm like, I'm going it. So that's what I'm saying. Ultimately, I'm just saying, like, I just think oftentimes when we're not able to embrace shame, or healthy shame, what ends up happening is we act like the first Adam. The first Adam was like, it's the woman you gave me, it's the system you gave me, it's always external. The problem is always external when we're not willing to tell the truth about us, what's going on here. There may be some realities and some truth outside, but I think we first have to go internal, right? Like, like, who's talking about sin anymore? Who's talking about anything anymore? Like, the problem is always somewhere else. It's always external. And I just think that, again, not to say that external is not a real thing, but what I'm saying is, like, for me, taking responsibility, I have to start with myself. Since where am I in this?
So to answer your question, I'm a person that enjoys the morning. I prefer a 2-hour buffer before my wife and kids get up. If I don't have that buffer, then their noises are more agitations than they are my ability to handle them and patience and kindness. Yeah. And so when that happens, it's almost like their voices are highly heightened. Yeah. Right.
Rather than voices of joy.
Exactly.
Voices of annoyance.
Yep. And I could tell when I don't have that buffer, when I don't have that time to let scripture wash over me, not to sitting in creation, because I like sitting outside, birds, letting the breeze come across my face, the sunrise, things like that. I need that. And when that doesn't happen, and I'm met with that noise, it's like, okay, I need a break. So for me, shalom and peace is the thing that allows me to engage that. You know?
So I really like people. I feel like I'm my best when I'm around people, talking. It's a family of 5, so I consider that sort of a large family, but never mind. Yeah, so yeah.
You like
Yeah.
Everybody got family.
Right, yeah. So yeah, but when I feel like I want to be by myself, secluded, like I don't want to be around anyone or everybody's in a good mood. I'm not a party pooper at all. Like I come in and I'm ready to, you know what I mean. When I feel like I'm bringing the mood down, like I know something is going on, and yeah. So when I want to run off and disengage or kind of just try to numb out everything, whether it be just a deep dive social media, something like that, then I'm like, yeah, this is a trigger, right? Like me wanting to be alone. So and what I do with that, kind of like the Dhati was saying, like, all right, where are you?
Yeah.
And I take a moment, and then I really have to realize that what I'm going through at this moment is not really who I am, right? And then like just really just check in with the Father again, and like, hey, like I need you right now. And if I can spend some time alone with Him, whether it be in prayer, song, whatever the case is, then usually it's that release to where I'm like, all right, like whatever it is, because usually it has something to do with, let's see, all of these emotions, probably some sort of, it's insecurity. That's not on here, but I guess it'll go with shame or something like that. Just not feeling like I'm enough.
Yeah.
Or whatever the situation is, whether I'm not enough in my family, or whether I feel like they feel like I'm not enough. What else can I do? Like, you know, I've been working since I'm 14, right? So it's like I'm always working. Wherever I go, I feel like I gotta work. And it's like when I adopt that mentality, or when I let that define me, when I'm not compensated for something, I'm like, well, I must not be enough. You know what I'm saying? And then, boom. I'm alone. I want to be, y'all do y'all thing, and you know what I mean. So yeah.
I can relate that what you said about needing that time to yourself before the family comes in the picture, because things happen. I kind of do the same thing, but for me it happens towards the end of the day. You know, morning I'm okay, kids are fine, even whatever they may do in the mornings. I got patience for that, but as then you working all day. By the time you get to the evening time, I can easily get agitated, right? The kids do something, or the house is not clean. And then I'm snapping about one thing or the other. And then half the time it takes a couple of those to be like, what am I doing? And then I, kind of go into Dhati, what you said, just like, am I actually really angry right now? Or is there something else going on here? And kind of processing that. Half the time my wife has to give me a stare and be like, are you really acting like this right now? And then I'm like, okay, let me think, what's really happening here, right? But that's, and then most of the time, even as men, when we're upset or ready to choke somebody, it's anger, right?
That shows things.
That's it.
He's the only. Let's be really clear. He's the only one choking me like that.
So I look this way.
He speaks for himself. I saw the He speaks for himself.
We tend to get angry first, but most of the time it's probably not anger, right? It's one of the other ones. It's probably is it shame? Is it fear? Loneliness? Hurt? But we start off with anger, and then we being able to where am I right now, or check yourself, or figure out what's really going on here, and what am I really feeling, and then if you're able to do that, that helps bring things down. Help
You are married to a therapist, so there's a blessing
I think
because
that's why I'm here. Because
there's a blessing in that, because you have literally an immediate resource before you that can help you through your regulation. But it also can be somewhat of a daunting thing, I imagine, because you feel like you're always being psychoanalyzed in some ways.
surprisingly, she turns it off at
I'm
home.
about to say your wife about to watch this, man.
She'd be the first one to say she turns it off at home.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to analyze me or anybody else. That's when I turn it on.
Okay.
I'm always analyzing her, and she's like, "Oh, really?"
She's like, don't
Right.
worry, I got
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah. So she usually turns it. She's good with the kids, right? Obviously, a lot of the stuff that I've learned in terms of parenting and the mental health obviously is coming from her. So she's got great language. She's got, I'm just like, I'm old school in a sense, right? So trying to learn how do I, integrate, all this new language and new way of parenting, in terms of the mental health aspect of things, and using like, what are you feeling right now, as opposed to, someone throwing a tantrum or someone just screaming. What are you feeling right now? And going through some of the language, things like that. So
I have, so I am an artist. We all have somewhat different professions, and there's some overlap. But as someone who creates, one of the things I've noticed that I don't think helps our mental and social health is the need to constantly produce, to always be on. There's a fact, not only in America are we fascinated with this idea of production and always being to produce, but as an artist, you have social media, you feel like if I'm not relevant, I'm gonna be forgotten. And that does something to your mental, that does something to your emotional health, you feel. And I personally, one of my core questions, as Mike Foster says, the primal question is, am I wanted? I always want to be wanted. And when I feel like I'm not, that leads to anxiety. I have fear. I'm like, will anybody ever appreciate me anymore? I feel like I won't be notable. So I say all that to say, there's something in my profession that I think needs to be addressed, and I am actively addressing it. In your own personal professions, or in the ways in which you operate vocationally, what are some ways that you find that there are some obstacles for your emotional and mental health, and some things that you would probably challenge or encourage folks, say, hey, consider this?
I'm in law enforcement. But I'm not.
He said, but I'm one of the good ones.
No.
They put a word.
He said, already apologizing.
Hey, man, speak your truth.
Let it go.
You know what I'm saying?
See,
I
he
said
started.
speak your
He
truth.
could let it go. He could have.
I said speak your truth. I encourage you.
You took the words. That wasn't what I was gonna say. I was gonna say I'm not a street cop. That's all I was gonna say.
He said,
Oh, so now you better than street cops.
So look, no, I was about to say, from my perspective, and trying to kind of just give a background, like, so I'm federal law enforcement, so I don't have like a beat on the street. It's all that's. Should we tell everybody we're like best friends, or that might ruin your street friends?
I can't put that out there. You can't put that out there.
Okay. Sorry. Retract that last thing. But what I do find is, so again, like, so I like people, and then my belief being a Christian, sometimes when I'm dealing with people, because my job tells me this is the law, and if this law is broken, this needs to happen, right? So when you see people that are extremely emotional, and they're showing remorse and things of that sort, but you still have to kind of
Execute the law.
kind of turn it off for a second, right? And like, you know what I mean? So it's like I think I do a very good job. I mean, I'll have to ask my wife, but I think I leave work at work, and I come home and it's different, right? So it's like when I walk through the door, it's almost like I got to put a callus over like the emotional part that really wants to feel for people, unless they have on the same uniform as me, because I have plenty of conversations with coworkers about faith, about home, but again,
I'm asking this question. You don't feel like you can be human with the people you interact with? Empathetic?
Not to a certain extent, or to a certain extent. I wouldn't say. So I would say no to that. Yes, I can definitely be human, right? Just because like me showing officer presence and being professional and somewhat stoic does not mean I'm not human, but it's not the same person who I am outside of, because I don't have to be, right? You know what I mean?
There's a level of vulnerability that
yeah, right. Because
your job can't require that of you when you're interacting with people.
And plus we have history, right? So there's been times where I've really believed, oh man, this guy right here, man, he is definitely, he's telling the truth. He's 100%. I believe him, right? And whatever the case is, let it slide. And I look at history, I'm like, man, look, this brother done did this, and this since I let him. Man, you know what I mean? So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, man, who can you really trust other than the person who's on your side, right? So, so that's like my struggle, I guess. Yeah. So this is what I tell my children. First of all, I don't feel like every person who has a badge and a gun is even if they have been sworn in to be law enforcement. I don't think they're law enforcement. Right? They're not. Everybody doesn't do things the right way.
All right, cut, print, send that off.
So
That's the clue.
so right.
That's the clue.
And you know, so and when you're on the street, you don't know which one you're gonna get. You know what I mean? So there's plenty of instances and stuff like that we can talk about. But if it comes to I have 15, 16, and 17, and they drive. You know, well, the oldest two and the youngest is about to learn. So if you're pulled over, do what he says, like to the T. Don't give anybody a reason. And then when it's done, let me know and I'll handle it. You know what I mean?
I mean, like
most people do know.
People
their
say
rights,
survive
but-
the interaction. Just the goal.
So not
But
I'm
I
not
think
saying,
that
I'm
to
not
me, that's
saying-
my point. What we are teaching our kids is survival. With that, what you just
So,
said
yeah,
right
yeah,
there
yeah.
was
Yeah,
is
yeah.
survival.
Right.
And then again, sometimes
100%. Because I
but-
need you to come home.
right.
You know what I
right.
mean?
But I think the problem, and when we talk about even policing and all of the tension, is I think both the cop and the person who's interacting can't be human. And I think that is at the core.
Can't.
Cannot.
They
Like you said,
feel like they can't.
They can't. Like I have to perform.
Right.
They have to. So everybody's performing, and that's great if things go the way things go. But as soon as we go off script, right? I'm gonna say things because I'm a cop and I gotta trust my cops.
Yeah.
And if you also need to perform your script. And if you go off script, then that's where the issues begin to happen. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah, no,
I
no.
guess what I'm saying is I think that part of it is again, all of us, that is a part of us dealing with trauma, and we're all in survival mode. When everybody's in survival mode, that's when we become unhuman. What I hear is two people who are afraid, interacting with one another,
Exactly.
who have fear.
And
right?
can't express it.
Right? Yeah, that are not expressing the fear. And I'm not even saying that you need to be saying that to hey, I'm just want you to know I'm afraid of you. Like, I'm not saying that. But the idea of if a cop can say, hey, I'm going into this interaction and I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid. And at the end of the day, I'm going home to my family. I have fear that I might not be going home to my family. Then you know that is going to bring a certain reaction that can trigger behaviors that, you know what I'm saying? And if a person is being pulled over, and I'm afraid. So like literally, this is a real for me. Because I grew up in Los Angeles, and I've had guns put on me. Even as a pastor, like literally Angie has knows that when in time, I would get pulled over and I would have to put my hands on the car because I'm triggered. Like I'm in my trauma and all that. And by the way, even as a pastor, most of the times I'm still asked to get out of the car, right? To this day. So there's fear that I'm going. And so I have to be willing to confess and to tell the truth. In the same way, like when I go to the grocery store, I'm saying if you say, don't go to the grocery store hungry, right? Because when you go to the grocery store hungry, you're going to end up getting, you're going to do, right, all of it.
You're like my peeps.
That's all. You see what I'm saying? But so I guess part of what I'm just saying is the idea of not wrong. I'm just saying what if we confess, hey, I'm going to the grocery store hungry. Yeah. And now I need my behavior, because the Bible says, be angry, but don't sin. So having fear is not the sin, but being our inability to confess. And so oftentimes people say, hurt people do what? Hurt people. But what I say is, hurt people who are not willing to confess their hurt people. Because hurt people who don't confess their hurt become resentful people. Resentful people become revenge-oriented people. But people who are willing to confess their hurt knows to take their hurt to people who know what to do with hurt. And so all I'm saying is I just think that it's important that we recognize that when we are in survival, and like I said at the beginning, survival is not bad. So it's like, so we're not talking about bad, but sometimes the best you're gonna have is survival, but you need to recognize that you're in survival.
Remember, his brother don't have to beat though. So
Yes.
Man don't have to be out there. We review all of those things. But what I'm saying, so how would you so what would you suggest?
Well,
No. He already preached his sermon.
No. But I would talk about it from
yeah, you did.
the pastor sermon.
We know you a pastor. We didn't heard it.
Yeah, the pastor. And I guess, yeah, so I'm the pastor.
From my feeling,
To get to, I got more to say. I got to repeat. I guess I want to go a deeper level with it. It says, what is driving with you and giving your communication to your kids? What's driving?
I'm saying, okay, to my
Like
kids.
feeling.
I thought you was talking about like
No, what?
out here on
So
the-
that's all I'm gonna say is like, what are you feeling by communicating that to your kids?
Oh, it's definitely fear. Because I've worked beside some of these
So
people.
no, and I'm not saying that, like, and I think it's appropriate. So that's why I said hurt people who don't confess their hurt people. Lonely people who don't confess their loneliness end up making only other people lonely, right? Because I'm not gonna confess my loneliness. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make you lonely by me being apathetic to you, right? And so that's all I'm saying is it's just like to some degree we have to like take responsibility and ownership, because otherwise, and as a pastor, what we will
So
do.
answer the question.
I think the number one thing that we need to do as pastors is that we like need to stop trying to fix people, right? And what I mean by that is oftentimes as pastors, we are unwilling to do our own work, right? And being able to confess kind of where we really are. So we end up, the word I have, we end up shooting on other people. Right, you should do this, should do that, as soon as I.
Other thing.
You gotta say that word a little. You gotta say that. With the pastor fingers. He said,
Hold up,
I'm gonna turn it down.
I guess my point is what ends up happening because we're not willing to do our own work. We do the work that we think we wish other people would have did to us, and we begin to do that for other people. And I was just like, instead of what I see many times in the scriptures, Jesus bringing them to the point where they can confess what they need. It wasn't like Jesus needed to know what they need, but he just wanted them to tell the truth. Confess what you need, and then I can meet your need. What we want to do is that because we want to be the hero in the stories, we begin to say, I don't need what you need. I'm going to go in and let me just tell you. And I think that's the issue that as pastors, we need to start doing. But like first take an inventory of ourselves, because what we have is fear that we're not worthy. If I don't have the answer, if I don't have then I'm not, and it's like, and then so what we do is that we start just like grabbing for stuff. So that's what I was saying.
Yeah, I could share. Background is in entrepreneurship, and so working as business entrepreneur or social entrepreneur, a lot of times you've got a vision, and you're moving forward. A lot of times you're alone, right? So a lot of times there's loneliness, right? And so what I talk about with other entrepreneurs is coming alongside others. Because a lot of times you get burnt out, right? Who gets sacrificed? Your family gets sacrificed, right? I'm similar in a lot of other professions, not just this, but I think that's a big thing in terms of feeling lonely, feeling like you got to do this alone. A lot of times your family doesn't even understand what you're doing, right? If you ask my wife, what do I do? Sure. So, so you're on this lonely journey. So I've actively tried to, over the past years, as understanding this, work alongside other people, like have other leadership teams together and do this journey together, whether it be in the social entrepreneurship track or on the business entrepreneurship track, and not sacrifice your family, right? And have more of a balance, because you can get really zoned in and just this is our mission. We're going to accomplish this. These are our goals, our financial goals for this company, or that we're going to make this kind of social impact, and nothing else matters, right? And you just got tunnel vision. A lot of things I know get sacrificed. So I think that's the advice I would give in terms of don't do it alone, balance things out with a team so you can, not sacrifice things like your family.
Entertainment, art, entertainment. I'll just say, hey, you're not your creation, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. You're not your creation. Don't get high on it. Like it's a dopamine hit.
Don't get high on your own supply.
Don't get high on your own supply. And a lot of people struggle with that in the entertainment field. I need the dopamine hit. You said something earlier. Just talk about relevance and who am I if I'm not wanted. But even if you look at everything that you did in most artists, we tend not to be okay with that long history of success. We need the new dopamine.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what I would tell people is, one, you're not your creation. And in social media, you got to watch out for the accolades being the dopamine high and needing to stay in that current. And you got to Sabbath. You have to Sabbath from creating. I think a lot of people think it's just, just getting into the scriptures and being with God, which is true. But God rested from creating. And even creating can become a sinful thing if you don't turn it off.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so sometimes you just got to stop.
Let's go. Is there any last words? Anything that you just want to just give to the people?
I had a thought.
Okay.
We talked about our children and what we went through as children and our children. One of the areas I think we all need to think about, I'm sure you guys all have, and people that are listening, is the social media aspect of that our kids are going through. We cannot relate. The things that our parents couldn't relate to us growing up, I think that's the big thing for us. So how do we, I don't have the answers, but that's something that we kind of have to hope to.
You said it all. The one thing I have a huge concern for alpha and generations coming behind that. Humanity is being redefined, artificial intelligence. You see artificial intelligence getting citizenship in Saudi Arabia. You see people who are confirmed in relationships with artificial intelligence, because that desire to be in a relationship 24/7 cannot be fulfilled by a human. And this is one thing I do say to pastors. I go, it is coming when wife and a husband walks and sits down and say, he's in a relationship or she's in a relationship with artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
And they're going to say it's not sin because it's not him.
I just think a theology of the body is necessary. A whole theology of the body is necessary. And that is, I think, thrown within there. So, brothers, this has been encouraging. Hopefully this won't be the last. But thank y'all for bringing good culture to the world. So,
I'm very glad.
I'm happy. I'm glad that you're glad.